We're hoping to hear from the committee chairman, Adam Schiff, as soon as that hearing is over. Calling more witnesses a day after Cohen's bombshell public testimony accusing the president of the United States of multiple crimes. The House Oversight Committee chairman says various committees will investigate Cohen's allegations, including the president's role in hush money payments. Walking out, President Trump heads home after cutting short his summit with Kim Jong-un. He walked out early after failing to reach a nuclear deal, blaming North Korea's demand for an end to U.S. sanctions. But was the North willing to bargain? And trusting Kim. In a shocking moment during the summit, President Trump defends Kim Jong-un in the brutal treatment and subsequent death of U.S. student Otto Warmbier. Why is he saying he believes the dictator's claim that he didn't know about the case? I'm Wolf Blitzer. You're in the Situation Room.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Breaking news: at any moment, the House Intelligence Committee should wrap up its closed-door hearing with President Trump's former lawyer and fixer, Michael Cohen. That comes a day after Cohen's explosive public testimony directly linking President Trump to his own crimes. Cohen alleges Donald Trump knew in advance about the release of stolen Democratic emails and says he broke the law as president by reimbursing Cohen for hush money payments. The president is calling Cohen a liar and is complaining about the timing of that public testimony, which eclipsed his summit with Kim Jong-un. He's now headed home empty-handed, cutting short the summit after failing to reach a nuclear deal and taking heat for defending the dictator in the brutal treatment and death of the American student Otto Warmbier. I'll speak with Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton, who questioned Cohen, and our correspondents and analysts. They will have full coverage of the day's top stories. Let's begin with our senior congressional correspondent, Manu Raju. He's up on Capitol Hill. So, Manu, what has the Intelligence Committee in the House been trying to get out of Michael Cohen?
Well, we're expecting this hearing that's been going on for 7.5 hours to conclude any minute. At that point, Michael Cohen is expected to make some comments here. We're expected to hear from Adam Schiff, the House Intelligence Committee chairman. It's unclear whether they've gotten all their answers. We expect perhaps that this could be carried over into next week, but we do believe that a large segment of the questioning has focused on his false statements that he made to this very committee back in 2017 about the pursuit by the Trump Organization of that Trump Tower Moscow project. Of the time when he testified before, he downplayed the role of the organization, downplayed the president, then candidate Trump's involvement, said it ended. All those talks did in January 2016. Now we've learned it at least occurred through the summer of that year. A lot of questions about that, whether there was any White House role or the president's attorney's role in editing his statement that he delivered to Congress. And the president's attorneys denied that they've had any role in changing the duration, the talk about the duration of how long those talks went on, and discussions about Roger Stone's communications that allegedly occurred with the president. At least one conversation Cohen revealed yesterday that occurred when Stone told the president that then candidate Trump that he had reached out to WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange about those stolen Democratic emails to get advance notice about that. We've heard that there's been lots of questions about that, whether there's any corroboration to that. The claim that Stone and the White House have all denied. But Wolf, a lot of things that came out of yesterday's testimony needed further probing, according to Adam Schiff, the chairman of the committee. We'll see if they got the answers they wanted, but we do expect perhaps that there could be Cohen. This may not be the last time he's on Capitol Hill. He could potentially come back again.
I suspect he will. Mano, based on Cohen's public testimony, Democratic committee chairs, they're telling you that they're gearing up for a lot more investigation threads about the president.
Yeah, that's right. Elijah Cummings, who's the House Oversight Committee chairman, told me that probably a big focus of his committee's investigation going forward will be over those hush money payments, including the president's involvement in signing for paying off, reimbursing Michael Cohen for paying off Stormy Daniels' claim of having an affair with the president right before the elections. Of course, Michael Cohen released a check yesterday, a copy of a check that the president signed from August of 2017. Elijah Cummings wants to look into that further, as well as other people who were named throughout yesterday's day-long hearing. He wants to bring them back, bring them to either reach out to them to question them or even bring them into a hearing. And that potentially could include some of the president's family members who could be contacted by this committee.
Follow the transcript. If there were names that were mentioned or records that were mentioned during the hearing, we'll figure out who we want to talk to, and we'll bring them in. We gathered a lot of information that I think will be, we may not look into it, our committee, but one of the 5 or 6 committees will.
So that could potentially include Donald Trump Jr., whose name was on at least one of those checks, as well as potentially even Ivanka Trump, her knowledge of the Trump Tower Moscow project. We'll see how they decide to pursue that. But one person's name who continually comes up is Alan Weisselberg, who's the CFO of the Trump Organization. Cohen alleged yesterday that he had significant involvement in those hush money payments. Cummings is making pretty clear he wants to hear from him. We'll hear other committees probably want to reach out to him as well. So this is not over anytime soon for at least that committee. He said there could be 5 or 6 committees in the House side investigating all of the allegations that came out in yesterday's hearing.
Yeah, Alan Weisselberg has been working for the Trump Organization for 40 years, going back to Donald Trump's own father. Manu, Cohen faces a Republican call now for a perjury investigation by the Justice Department based on what he said yesterday. Tell us about that.
Yeah, 2 Republicans very close to the president, Jim Jordan, the ranking Republican, Mark Meadows, another member close to the president, sent a letter to the Justice Department asking for an investigation into whether Michael Cohen lied to the House Oversight Committee over a variety of matters they say are completely contradicted by court filings, by the Southern District of New York's claims, including whether Michael Cohen sought a White House job. He said that he did not have any interest in working at the White House. They say that is contradicted by text messages seized by the Southern District of New York. They also claim that Michael Cohen saying that he didn't defraud any bank is also a lie. They say that he did engage in some bank fraud, although he pleaded guilty to making false statements to a bank, not bank fraud. But nevertheless, there are several allegations like that throughout their referral suggesting that he lied to this committee, lied to Congress again. Of course, the question is whether or not the Justice Department decides to investigate it. That is a decision for Bill Barr, the Attorney General himself. And right now we're hearing from Cohen's camp pushing back. Lanny Davis says Michael Cohen's attorney says there was nothing false in that testimony and calls these accusations baseless and partisan.
We'll see where, if at all, that heads. All right, Manu, thanks very much. As soon as Adam Schiff and company walk out of that closed-door hearing, let us know. We'll hear what they have to say. Let's bring in our senior justice correspondent, Evan Perez. Evan, Congress starts calling executives from the Trump Organization, family members, other witnesses. Which of these pose the biggest threat potentially to the president?
Well, Alan Weisselberg, Wolf, knows everything. He, as you said just a minute ago, has been working with the organization for decades. He is a CFO of the organization. He has provided information under a very limited immunity deal to the Southern District of New York. He testified before the grand jury in the Michael Cohen investigation. But he knows a lot more. And so if the Democrats want to go there, you have to think that he is witness number one. And again, yesterday, his name kept coming up, as Manu pointed out, and certainly after yesterday's hearing, he might be a household name. Rona Graff is obviously the president's longtime personal assistant. You have to think that she has seen and knows a lot of what happened in there, especially for a president who doesn't use email.
Hold on a second. Hold on. Michael Cohen is walking out. Let's listen.
Waiting around for just me. There's not much I can say. Other than it was very productive. As I said, I'm committed to telling the truth, and I will be back on March 6th to finish up. There's more to discuss. So thank you guys so much. Sorry, I'm sorry you guys had to stick around all day long.
All right, so there's some news. He's coming back March 6th to continue his testimony before this committee. Evan, not a huge surprise. We anticipated this committee, other committees, they have a lot of questions.
They do, Wolf. And I think, look, I think these closed-door testimonies, the ones that are run by staff, they tend to be a lot more productive. You tend to have better questions. It's a lot more organized. And look, I think you could see the Michael Cohen's face there. He's pretty happy with what he's doing right now. And just going back to your question, you know, I think Rona Graff, the president's longtime personal assistant, knows a great deal about what happened, especially for a president who doesn't use email. He doesn't leave a lot of records, written records of a lot of his communications. And I think what you saw from Michael Cohen yesterday and probably behind closed doors today is a bit of a roadmap for these investigators.
We anticipate Adam Schiff, the committee chairman, he'll emerge from that room momentarily as well, and we're told he will want to make a statement. We'll have coverage of that. You make an important point, because when there's a closed-door hearing like this, they go into a secure room. The members are there, but they usually leave it up to the staffers, the staff members, to go ahead and do the questioning.
Right,
and
exactly.
There's no 5-minute time limit.
There's no 5-minute time limit, and you don't have a lot of members who are trying to preen for the cameras and asking terrible questions, which we sometimes see in these hearings, frankly. You have staff who are very, very schooled, very educated on the subject matters, and ask really good questions.
Let me go back to Manu Raju. He's up on Capitol Hill outside that House Intelligence Committee hearing room. It's a secure room. Is that one of those so-called SCIFs? Is that where this is taking place?
Yeah, it is, right in the basement of the House side of the Capitol. And Michael Cohen making that comment that he's going to be back here on March 6th to finish his testimony. We were told that he had a hard out tonight and had to leave at 5. So there are a lot more questions that members of this committee have. So we'll hear what Adam Schiff has to say when he comes out momentarily, whether or not the things that he wanted to ask about, the conversation between Roger Stone and the president that allegedly occurred, the Trump Tower Moscow projects, whether or not Donald Trump Jr. had told the president about the Trump Tower meeting that occurred in 2016, all of which have been denied by various parties. What they learned from Michael Cohen. We'll see how much Schiff decides to reveal. But, yeah, you mentioned this is in a classified setting. That's one reason why right now it's hard to get too many details about precisely what Michael Cohen said in there, and he didn't provide much on his way out. He would not answer any of our questions. I tried to ask him about the criminal referral that 2 Republican members just did, referring to the Justice Department to investigate what they allege were his false statements to this committee. He didn't respond. Lanny Davis, his attorney, said I have responded, and of course Lanny Davis has said those charges are meritless. But nevertheless, the interesting thing that Cohen revealed, he'll be back here March 6th to finish his testimony. So this will be the 4th appearance he has on Capitol Hill before he heads to jail later this spring.
And there may be more. And Manu, March 6th, he was supposed to begin his 3-year prison sentence at a federal penitentiary in upstate New York on March 6th, but that was delayed for health reasons. He has shoulder surgery. He's recovering from that. He's not going to begin that prison sentence now until May 6th. So he's going to be out of jail for a while. So if they want him to come back for yet more testimony behind closed doors and open session, there's plenty of time.
Yeah, absolutely. And Elijah Cummings has said before, I asked him before, would you even bring back Michael Cohen if you were in jail? And he said absolutely he could. And that's something that he would be open to, perhaps compelling him to do that if he needed to. At the moment, that committee seems satisfied with their questioning. The Senate Intelligence Committee doesn't seem to have any reason for bringing him back. But the House Intelligence Committee, the final one that wants to question him. So this probably, when he comes back on March 6th, will be the final time that he appears here on Capitol Hill. And we'll see whether or not there are any of these allegations of him making false statements leads to further investigation of him. But nevertheless, he's not done answering questions. Members want to look into all the allegations that he made. At least 5 or 6 House committees want to investigate the various crimes that he has been alleging that the president was involved with over the years before he was president, and while he was in office. So a lot more for members to investigate. What they come up with, we'll just have to see.
Yeah, it sounds like they're at least the Democrats, the majority in the House Intelligence Committee, feel that this session today, and it's been going on since around 9:30 this morning, was productive, and they were getting a lot of answers. But now that they have to, they want to continue this conversation on March 6th, which suggests, at least to me, Manu, and I'm anxious for your thoughts, that they're getting new information. They think it's fruitful, and they want to continue.
Yeah, that could be one way of looking at it. I was told by one member that there have been getting some new information. I also been told that at the beginning it was going rather slow. There was a lot of discussion about this background and the like, not real new information that had been revealed. This was in the first hour or so of testimony, and then the House members broke to have a vote, and that delayed it for about another hour. And then the Republicans had their chance to question as well. So they've been going back and forth about an hour each time, then a half hour each time, 40 minutes each time for each side. Staff members have been doing the questioning. Some members themselves have been doing the questioning, the ones who have attended. Some have had to leave, have left early as well. So this has been going on for most of the day, but there are a lot of questions that these given the format, a lot of questions probably have not just been asked yet, especially given the time frame of Michael Cohen had to leave, one reason why he has to come back. So how much new they've learned, we'll just have to see. But clearly they've been pressing for answers for quite some time, and they just haven't gotten everything they want to learn at this point, Wolf.
And we're told Adam Schiff momentarily will be emerging from that secure room, walking over to the microphone and making a statement. Mano, stand by for a moment. Evan, what is it? Here he comes, actually. Here comes Adam Schiff, the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. He's going to make a statement.
Good afternoon. Just want to make a couple brief comments and then happy to answer a question or two. We had a long day, but it wasn't a long enough day. And we very much appreciate Mr. Cohen's cooperation. He has obviously had 3 very long days. He'll be returning on March 6th for additional testimony. And I think we all feel it was a very productive interview today where he was able to shed light on a lot of issues that are very core to our investigation. And we were able to drill down in great detail. So March 6th will be the next part of his testimony. The following week on March 14th, we'll have an open interview with Felix Sater on Moscow Trump Tower. I should tell you, just to set your expectations, not every hearing is going to be like the open hearing with Michael Cohen. We're going to try to do as much as we can in open session. Some we can and some we can't. Next week with Michael Cohen, we'll continue to be in closed session. We have to look at these on a case-by-case basis in terms of the investigative needs as well as equities of the Department of Justice. But we are going to try to do as much as we can in the open. So those are the next 2 scheduled interviews of the committee. And with that, I'm happy to respond to a couple of questions.
You wanted to learn about the White House's role in potentially editing some of the statements that were made by Michael Cohen ahead of his 2017 testimony. What did you learn about that, and as well as the pursuit of the Trump Tower project, Moscow project?
I'm not going to comment on any of the substance of our testimony today. We will be, at the appropriate point, releasing his testimony publicly. We're not going to do that before his testimony is complete, and we're going to have to determine whether there are any investigative equities in terms of the timing after his second session with us. I can say that on a number of the topics that he testified about yesterday, we were able to go into great detail. But we also covered a number of items and issues important to us that were not the subject of the hearing yesterday.
Mr. Cohen brought documentation to back up his claims yesterday for oversight. Did he bring any specific documents that he could back up claims as regards to Russia and the president?
We are in communication with obviously Mr. Cohen and his counsel about further document requests following our interview today that we'll be able to discuss at our next session. We also went through documents in our possession, dozens of documents in our possession with Mr. Cohen, but we have additional document requests that we will be in discussion with him about. We have to make this the last question.
Do you think he didn't answer any questions he refused to answer or did not help the committee with in terms of
he was fully cooperative and answered all of our questions, and this has obviously been an excruciating time for him, and we're very grateful that he was as forthcoming as he was. We made the same admonishment that my colleague Chairman Cummings made so eloquently, much more eloquently than I, that he needed to tell us the full truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. None of the questions we had for him went unanswered.
Thank you.
All right, so there you have it. More news from Adam Schiff, the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, confirming March 6th. Michael Cohen will return behind closed doors, answer more questions from members of the House Intelligence Committee and the staff. He says what happened today was a very productive interview with Michael Cohen. He said eventually they will be releasing the transcript of all of these interviews with Michael Cohen, but they want to wait until they complete their investigation before they do so. Another bit of news, very potentially significant, on March 14th, Adam Schiff says there will be an open public hearing with Felix Sater on the development of Moscow Trump Tower, what was going on there. There's some pictures with Felix Sater right now. Evan, this is potentially very significant, A, that they're bringing Felix Sater in to testify, but B, that it will be in open session.
Oh, absolutely, Wolf. I mean, look, if yesterday we got a sense of the type of person that Donald Trump as a businessman was in business with, this is Michael Cohen, who the Republicans spent all day saying he's a liar, he's a cheat, all of these things, right? Felix Sater is going to be on the order of that. I mean, he is somebody who in the 1990s was in business with the Russian mafia. He was actually convicted as part of that, some kind of stock fraud scheme. And years later, he became an FBI informant. And yet, despite all of that, Wolf, he was involved in this scheme to try to build a Moscow Trump Tower. He's the one who Michael Cohen was working with. There's a lot of communications between him and Felix Sater and trying to deal with the Russians as they're trying to build this project and trying to go through the business arrangements of trying to deal with the Russians to build this project in Moscow. Now, obviously, those plans went on a lot longer than the president or his family ever admitted to during the campaign. So I think there's a lot that we're going to learn from him. And again, it's going to help sort of underline what kind of businessman Donald Trump has been all of these years, right? He's been apparently in business with scoundrels, people who are mobsters, people who lie, like Michael Cohen, who lie and cheat on their taxes. So I think it's going to be one of those days where you're going to see a lot of the sort of the dirty laundry, a lot of the skeletons of the Trump organization that the Democrats want to highlight as part of this investigation.
And it's interesting because one of the reasons that Michael Cohen is about to begin in May a 3-year prison sentence is because he lied before Congress under oath about the development of this Moscow Trump Tower project, saying it basically wrapped up early in 2016, but later it was confirmed it went through the summer of 2016, may have gone all the way up to the election. And Michael Cohen keeps saying this was going to be worth hundreds of millions of dollars potentially for the Trump organization, and that Donald Trump, if he were to lose the presidential election, was gearing up to make a lot of money.
Right.
And Felix Sater was at the heart of all those negotiations.
Felix Sater was at the heart of those negotiations. And in fact, I think Felix Sater probably helped get Michael Cohen in prison because it's his communications. He made it clear that those talks were going on a lot longer than Michael Cohen first admitted to when he made those false statements to Congress. So again, this is going to be one of those days where the Democrats are going to use this to sort of shine a light on the business practices, what kind of businessman Donald Trump was all those years. He's famous for The Apprentice, but the point that they're trying to make is that Donald Trump was essentially in business with mobsters, with all of the sort of the scoundrels that he doesn't want you to know about.
And Donald Trump, at various occasions, belittled any conversations he may have had with Felix Sater, barely knew the guy.
But according to Cohen, Sater had an office on the same floor as the president.
But the president, as a private citizen and elsewhere, used to say, barely knows the guy, poo-pooing the whole thing. Stand by. I want to go back to Manu Raju. Manu, so we got some significant news out of the House Intelligence Committee. You're there. You heard the chairman, Adam Schiff, say that Michael Cohen will be back on March 6th. And then a week later, on March 14th, there will be an open hearing with Felix Sater.
Yeah, it's a real sign here of what Adam Schiff has been saying, that he wants to investigate as part of his new chairmanship, to look into any financial interests with the Russians. It's going to be a big focus of this investigation, with the president's ties to Russia, what he's done business-wise in the like, and how that may tie back to the Russian interference campaign, and looking at the Trump Tower Moscow project, the pursuit of that project, what actually happened is central to that. And what they find out, whether it confirms Adam Schiff's suspicions or not, that's a separate question, but it's at least something they want to investigate now going forward. So bringing back Felix Sater and letting the public see is a rather unusual thing for this committee. committee, typically witness interviews have been done, at least in the last Congress, been done behind closed doors. Adam Schiff has actually preferred that these witness interviews be done behind closed doors, but bringing this out publicly will allow the public to see the pursuit and what was going on actually with that Trump Tower Moscow project. A real sign is how they want to focus their investigation on that effort, and as well as the president's financial ties that may exist with some Russian entities. Now, he would not comment about what happened behind closed doors all day for more than 7.5 hours with Michael Cohen. I tried to ask Adam Schiff directly about things that he wanted to ask about, whether the White House was involved, the level of their involvement in editing the statement that was a false statement that was made back in 2017 that Cohen, when he downplayed the role of the Trump organization's effort to try to get financing for that Trump Tower Moscow project. He did not want to comment about that, did not want to comment virtually about anything that would happen today, saying they're going to release a transcript at some point, but it's probably not going to be for quite some time, and they want to hear from him again on March 6th. But significant that they want to at least open up one key witness interview. We'll see what they learn. But he tried to downplay expectations, saying, don't expect what you saw yesterday to happen when Felix Sater comes in mid-March. Perhaps a sign that perhaps he may not reveal as much as what Michael Cohen did just yesterday, Wolf.
We'll see what happens. Bono, stand by. I'll get back to you shortly. But joining us right now, a member of the House Oversight Committee who questioned Michael Cohen yesterday, Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton of here in Washington, D.C. Congresswoman, thanks so much for joining us. So what's your reaction to what we just learned of Michael Cohen coming back to the House Intelligence Committee on March 6th?
Well, I'm really not very impressed because we didn't learn anything. I think yesterday's hearing was really important because you saw the real Michael Cohen. We haven't even seen what Michael Cohen, what kind of information he has for the Intelligence Committee. We couldn't bring it out in our own hearing because they told us, do not touch that, that's for the Intelligence Committee. What we did see in Michael Cohen was a man who was as close to the president as anybody could be. And closer in many ways than his wife. I mean, he used Michael Cohen to verify a lie that Stormy Daniels, didn't exist for all intents and purposes. I think what was most important is not that there were a mountain of new revelations that came out yesterday. I think what was most important, we saw a man as close to the president as you could be, telling us that essentially the president was in on exactly these lies. For example, that this check that he produced, the Stormy Daniels check, that was conjured overtly between Cohen and the president. Of course, the president's had to admit that since. After disclaiming it altogether. So I think that the Intelligence Committee ought to listen hard to Michael Cohen because he was as close to the president doing his dirty deeds or not as anybody you're going to hear from.
You also just heard that Felix Sater, a former business associate of Donald Trump, will testify in open session before the House Intelligence Committee on March 14th. What light do you think he could shed on this overall investigation into the Moscow potential Trump Tower being built there?
Yeah, it's according to what he's really free to say. I mean, remember, we've had people who lied. On Cohen, we were pretty sure he was not lying because there was a terrible price to pay as he was. He's already going to jail. So this is a name that has not come to us before. One of his business associates. Cohen is the first true associate we have been able to hear from. So I do think if you are able to get one of his business associates to really talk, you will hear from somebody very valuable. I'm not sure there is anybody more valuable than Michael Cohen because you tell your lawyer things that you wouldn't tell anybody else. Now, the lawyer-client relationship, of course, doesn't exist here because of the crimes that have been involved.
Alan Weisselberg, who's the chief financial officer of the Trump Organization, has limited immunity. He could be very valuable indeed. I'll see if he's going to be brought forward. He's been working for the Trump Organization for some 40 years, going back to Donald Trump's father. It's not clear if he's told prosecutors about anything other than the hush money scheme that was involved with Stormy Daniels. But he's been, as I say, with the Trump Organization for decades. Do you think Weisselberg may be able to provide additional insight to your committee, to other committees, about other potential crimes by the president?
No doubt. I mean, finally, this man may know about taxes, the one thing we've not been able to get. But he who knows about Trump's finances knows almost as much as Michael Cohen knows. And I say Michael Cohen knows everything because of the kind of trust you have to have with your lawyer. But the man who was writing the checks, that's the next person I think we all want to hear from. Because everything from his income taxes to who he was writing checks to his bankruptcies, he's a big deal.
Did you find Michael Cohen credible?
I found him credible because, not only because of how he presented himself. I had to think, what is the worst thing that could happen to this man? The worst thing could happen, remember he is still under investigation, is that having lied and drawn a 3-year sentence, he would lie again. I don't think he was lying yesterday.
How do you plan to act on Michael Cohen's claim that the president may have participated in bank fraud?
Now, we're getting pretty close to the president's deep involvement in illegal matters. This House has not been interested in impeaching the president, and I don't think, even as we are learning new things that seem impeachable, that we're going to move forward to impeach him. And the reason I don't think so is that an impeachment is nothing more than an indictment. A U.S. attorney doesn't bring an indictment unless he knows he can move forward and get a conviction with the jury. And let's face it, the jury in this case, the Senate of the United States, is not going to move any more than it moved on the last time we tried this. So I think this creates a true dilemma, because more and more of what we are learning implicates the president in deep illegality, and yet the House is stuck on what to do.
Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton from Washington, D.C., thanks so much for joining us.
Of course.
All right, let's bring in our experts and our analysts to assess what's going on, and it's all very, very dramatic. Jeffrey Toobin, first to you. The news coming out of the House Intelligence Committee that Michael Cohen is coming back, more closed-door testimony on March 6th, and then Felix Sater, a business associate who was involved in the plans to build a Trump Tower in Moscow, will be questioned at an open hearing before the House Intelligence Committee on March 14th.
Well, this just shows that, investigations generate their own momentum or they die. And the question for the House Democrats now is, how much do they want to push this? And there is a lot they could do, but it's going to take a lot of initiative. Are they going to call Alan Weisselberg? If they call him, are they going to vote to give him immunity in the likely event that he decides to take the fifth? What about Donald Trump Jr.? What about Ivanka? What about the other Trump executives named? How should they be open sessions or closed sessions? Do they want to subpoena documents as well as individuals? I mean, all of this could be done, but it would take a ramping up that the Democrats have not done in a long time, and it will certainly generate a lot of criticism from Republicans. So we'll see whether they want to do it.
But the Democrats are in the majority in the House of Representatives right now. They're majority in the House Intelligence Committee. They're doing what the Republicans wouldn't do. So that once again underscores elections have consequences. Samantha Vinograd, Felix Sater, we're going to be learning a lot more about this guy over the next couple of weeks. Rather complicated background, as we heard from Evan Perez. He was once in business with the Russian mafia, later convicted, became an FBI informant, at one point was intimately involved with Michael Cohen in planning the development of a Trump Tower in Moscow that could have generated potentially millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. What do you think he will bring to the table?
Well, let's just say it. Here's another man with a less than stellar track record of associates and activities that President Trump sought to bring into his orbit. And Wolf, I really think it depends in front of whom he's testifying. We just found out that he'll be testifying in front of the House Intelligence Committee, And Democrats in the House are really playing this from a team perspective. We have the House Intelligence Committee that's looking into counterintelligence issues, so I would expect those kinds of questions to come up in his testimony in March. And we have the House Oversight Committee, which has really limited its investigation to false statements by the president and debts and payments during the 2016 campaign. So we could see Felix Sater, Don Jr., Ivanka, and others testify on different types of criminal behavior depending on who they're in front of.
Everybody stand by. I want to bring in a key member of the House Intelligence Committee right now, Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell of California. He just emerged from that all-day closed-door hearing with Michael Cohen. Congressman, thanks for joining us. Did you learn anything new from Michael Cohen's testimony today?
Oh boy, Wolf, that would be an understatement. We learned a lot of new things. I can't go into them. We're still interviewing him. He's coming back next week. But there's very valuable new leads that we learned, and he's been asked to bring back some documents to corroborate what he's told us. But we did find him to be cooperative and answered every question we asked.
So beyond what he said yesterday during the public hearing before the House Oversight Committee, you're suggesting that additional new information was released, very important, critical information. Is that right?
Yes, Wolf.
Did his testimony today behind closed doors, and I know you're restricted in what you can say until they release the transcript, and Adam Schiff says at one point they will release the transcript. Did he give your committee new reason to go ahead and subpoena additional witnesses in the investigation?
We certainly have learned about additional relevant witnesses, and that includes what we heard yesterday on the Oversight Committee. And I think this is really also a matter of, the different committees of jurisdiction sorting out, which one will take up which witness. But I found him, Wolf, I have to say, different than when we interviewed him back in October 2017. There was just more of a carefulness to his presentation today. He did not want, to say anything that could be misleading or inaccurate. I didn't see him demonstrate that concern when he testified in October 2017. And I also, when he perjured himself. Before the Congress. He also now has a sword of Damocles, if you will, hanging over his head, in that he has seen that Paul Manafort went from being a cooperative witness with the government to lying during that cooperation agreement, and now faces 19 to 24 years in prison. I just got the sense, because Michael Cohen seems very concerned about his family, he does not want to touch that same hot stove.
Can you tell us what kind of documents you'd like to get that you want him to bring to your committee next time around?
I wish I could, Wolf, but the pledge that Chairman Schiff has made is that we're going to try and make this transcript available, as soon as, the testimony is over, and we check to make sure it's not invading on any investigative, open investigations that are out there.
Tell us why you want to bring Felix Sater, this mysterious individual who was involved with Michael Cohen in the planning of a Trump Tower in Moscow. Why do you want to bring him before your committee?
Felix Sater is a Russian-American who has worked with Donald Trump in the past, has worked to bring a Trump Tower to New York, and is the one who pitched Michael Cohen on a Trump Tower in Moscow. This individual worked on the 26th floor of Trump Tower, the same floor Donald Trump was on. He had a Trump Organization business card, and so he was very close to Donald Trump and very involved in the Trump Tower Moscow deal. So there will be public benefit to understand why a presidential candidate was seeking to put a tower in Moscow at the same time that we're starting to learn about Russia's attacks on our democracy. And that, I think that'll be very illuminating.
Is he coming to your committee voluntarily, or has he been subpoenaed?
I don't want to misspeak on that, Wolf, so I'm not clear. I'll just say we do seek to have every witness come forward voluntarily. I'm not aware of a subpoena that's been issued.
And why did you decide, you and Adam Schiff and your committee, to have his testimony be done in public?
Because of the public value of understanding, again, you have a candidate for President of the United States, somebody who is also a business person, and he's mixing the two. He's doing business in Moscow throughout the presidential campaign, beyond the Iowa caucus, the New Hampshire primary, and not just with the British or Mexico. He's doing it with an adversary, and an adversary that we would later learn in the campaign was working against our interests and interfering in our elections. So it's important that the American people understand what Donald Trump's role was in that Trump Tower project.
The president says Michael Cohen's testimony yesterday, the president claims it proves his assertion there was no collusion. Michael Cohen did testify that he had no evidence of collusion, although he said he has his own personal suspicions of collusion. How do you see it?
So first, Michael Cohen said he has no direct evidence of collusion, but he has suspicions of collusion. And Wolf, as you know, in the law, direct evidence and circumstantial evidence are treated the same. However, it's interesting that the president and his supporters in Congress like to pull out what helps them as to what Michael Cohen says, but then dismisses everything he says that hurts them and calls him, a convicted liar. You have to take the good and the bad here, and when you take the good and the bad, it's all bad for Donald Trump.
Do you believe Michael Cohen provided key information to the special counsel, Robert Mueller, about the collusion part of the investigation?
I can just tell you, based on what we've seen from Michael Cohen's, his plea, that he's provided hours of testimony to the special counsel. This is a team that's moving expeditiously, doesn't have time to waste, and I would just conclude that looking at how long he spent with them as compared to others who have been relevant, it would appear that he has been quite helpful to me.
What was your assessment, Congressman, of what Michael Cohen had to say about Roger Stone, Assange, WikiLeaks, the release of all those damaging Democratic Hillary Clinton emails during the campaign?
When I watched Michael Cohen testify yesterday about the exchange with Roger Stone, it really had just confirmed what most of us had believed based on all of the arrows pointing in the direction that Roger Stone had told Donald Trump about what Julian Assange was doing. We know from our investigation 2 years ago, Donald Trump and Roger Stone have been pals for years. They always talked about politics. They talked on the phone often throughout the campaign, and they met in person often. So it would actually be unnatural for Roger Stone not to tell Donald Trump about this. And just to take a step back, Wolf, Roger Stone says that his conversations with WikiLeaks were completely innocent. And if they were completely innocent, then why wouldn't he have told Donald Trump about it? If they were nefarious and he was trying to protect him, then you could understand why. So it just adds up to everything that we believe we knew from our prior investigation.
Congressman Eric Swalwell of the Intelligence Committee, you guys have been busy all day. Thanks very much for joining us.
My pleasure, Wolf. Thanks.
All right, we got a lot more to discuss, much more on all the breaking news right after this. Kushner, the president's son-in-law, how he received his security clearances. The New York Times saying the president of the United States, the father-in-law of Jared Kushner, personally ordered the U.S. intelligence community to grant him top-secret security clearances, overruling recommendations from the CIA and others. Let me read a few sentences from this explosive article. President Trump ordered his chief of staff to grant his son-in-law and senior advisor Jared Kushner a top-secret security clearance last year, overruling concerns flagged by intelligence officials and the White House's top lawyer. 4 people briefed on the matter said Mr. Trump's decision in May so troubled senior administration officials that at least one, the White House chief of staff at the time, John F. Kelly, wrote a contemporaneous internal memo about how he had been, quote, ordered to give Mr. Kushner the top-secret clearance. The White House counsel at the time, Donald F. McGahn II, also wrote an internal memo outlining the concerns that had been raised about Mr. Kushner, including by the CIA, and how Mr. McGahn had recommended that he not be given a top-secret clearance. Let me go to Samantha Vinograd, who used to work at the National Security. You used to receive top-secret security clearances. This New York Times story adds that this disclosure of this memo, the order by the president, contradicts what the president said in an Oval Office interview with the New York Times in January when he said he had no role in his son-in-law's receiving those clearances.
Well, I don't think any of us are surprised anymore when the president lies about process and counterintelligence issues. But let's just talk about what this actually means. In layman's terms, the president of the United States knowingly directed his team to give a potential counterintelligence risk, Jared Kushner, access to the most sensitive information in the country. So he discounted what experts said, and he put each and every American at risk because Jared Kushner is roaming the halls of the West Wing. And according to the CIA and according to the intelligence community, Jared Kushner should not be trusted to access classified information.